Admiral Kira Chen stood at the observation deck of Ganymede Station, watching her latest creation emerge from the construction base. The massive vessel looked nothing like the sleek warships that dominated human space. Instead of smooth curves and elegant lines, it resembled an ancient sea vessel made of rough geometric shapes, complete with what appeared to be wooden masts and canvas sails stretched between them. The other officers called it her folly. The press dubbed it the space galleon. But they didn't know what she knew. They couldn't see past the deliberately primitive exterior to understand the revolutionary technology hidden within. "Admiral, the Nexian delegation has arrived early." Her aide, Lieutenant Park, appeared at her shoulder. "They're requesting an immediate tour of our shipyards." Chen smiled. "Perfect timing. Have them brought directly here." The Nexians were everything humanity had come to expect from an advanced alien civilization. Tall, ethereal beings with silvery skin and flowing robes embedded with technology beyond human understanding. Their own ships were works of art, all sweeping lines and impossible geometries that seemed to bend space itself. Ambassador Zalrin's expression was impossible to read as he gazed out at Chen's creation, but the slight tremor in his secondary breathing tentacles betrayed his reaction. "Admiral Chen, surely this vessel is not meant to represent the pinnacle of human military technology." "The HDF Odyssey is our newest flagship," Chen replied calmly. "Would you like a closer look?" The tour that followed was a carefully choreographed dance. Chen showed them exactly what she wanted them to see: the rough exterior plating that looked like wooden planks, the sail-like structures that seemed to serve no purpose, the complete lack of visible weapons or defensive systems. With each stop, she watched the Nexians' barely concealed disdain grow. "I must be direct, Admiral," Zalrin said finally. "Our scans indicate your civilization has achieved Class 3 technological status. Yet this vessel appears to be regressive, almost primitive. We cannot help but wonder if humanity is truly ready for membership in the Galactic Concordat." Chen's smile never wavered. "Ambassador, let me tell you about an ancient human naval commander named Yi Sun-Sin. In the late 16th century, when facing an overwhelmingly superior Japanese fleet, he created what became known as the Turtle Ship, a vessel that appeared crude and primitive, but contained innovations that changed the course of naval warfare." She gestured at the Odyssey. "Humanity has learned that sometimes the most effective weapon is the one your enemy dismisses as worthless. Those sails you see, they're actually arrays of quantum-entangled particles that can redirect energy weapons back at their source. The wooden exterior, programmable matter that can reconfigure itself in microseconds to adapt to any attack pattern." But Zalrin's tentacles twisted in confusion. "Why disguise such advanced technology in this manner?" "Because, Ambassador, we've studied the histories of countless alien civilizations, including your own. We've seen how technological development usually follows predictable patterns. But humanity, we evolved on a death world, fighting to survive against impossible odds. We learned to think differently, to see possibilities where others see only primitive solutions." She turned to face the Nexian delegation fully. "The Odyssey isn't just a warship, it's a statement. Humanity will not be bound by conventional thinking. We will not follow the expected path of technological development, and any civilization that judges us solely by appearances does so at their own peril." The Nexians departed shortly after, their previous condescension replaced by an uneasy silence. As Chen watched their shuttle return to their impossibly elegant vessel, Lieutenant Park approached again. "Do you think they understood the message, Admiral?" Chen's expression was thoughtful. "They understood enough to be worried. And that's exactly what we wanted." In her office later that day, Chen reviewed the classified reports from her research teams. The Odyssey's seemingly primitive design masked technologies that were generations ahead of anything the Nexians had shown humanity. But the true genius wasn't in the technology itself. It was in making it look like humanity was lagging behind. Because Chen knew something the Nexians didn't. Humanity wasn't trying to catch up to the galactic community. They had already surpassed them in many ways. The challenge now was managing that revelation without triggering the panic and potential hostility that could come from such a dramatic shift in the perceived balance of power. She pulled up the designs for her next project, a vessel that would look even more primitive than the Odyssey. On the surface, it would appear to be nothing more than a collection of crude shapes, held together by what looked like industrial-age rivets and wells. But inside, Chen smiled again, thinking of the old Earth saying about books and their covers. The galaxy was about to learn that lesson the hard way. Grand Strategist Vexthor paced the crystalline deck of his command vessel, his iridescent scales shifting colors with each agitated step. The holographic projection of the human vessel, this Odyssey, rotated slowly before him, its crude form an insult to everything he understood about advanced warfare. "Play the sensor recordings again," he commanded. His analysis team, composed of the finest minds in the Nexian Empire, exchanged worried glances with their tertiary eyes. "Sir," Chief Analyst Miratel began, her voice modulated carefully, "we've reviewed the data 17 times. The results remain inconsistent with known physics." The recording played again. The Odyssey, seemingly vulnerable and primitive, encountered a pirate fleet in the Orion sector. The pirates, flying stolen Nexian corvettes, opened fire with phase-locked plasma cannons, weapons that should have vaporized the crude human vessel instantly. Instead, those strange sail-like structures had shimmered. The energy simply vanished. Then, impossibly, it had reappeared behind the pirate fleet, destroying 3 ships before they could even register what had happened. "Quantum entanglement on that scale shouldn't be possible," Miratel continued. "The energy requirements alone would be." And yet, Vexthor interrupted, they achieved it using what appears to be primitive solar sail technology. He gestured at the hologram. "Look at those joints, those exposed support structures. They're practically inviting attack. It defies every principle of advanced ship design." "Perhaps," a new voice suggested, "that is precisely the point." All eyes turned to elder scientist Kexri, who had remained silent until now. The ancient Nexian scales had long since faded to a pale silver, but his primary eyes still burned with intensity. "Explain," Vexthor demanded. "I have been studying human historical records," Kexri said, manipulating the hologram to show various human naval vessels throughout their history. "There is a pattern. Time and again, they deliberately present weakness to mask strength. They understand something we have forgotten in our pursuit of perfection, the power of misdirection." The elder scientist highlighted various sections of the Odyssey. "These apparently crude elements. They're not weaknesses. They're exactly where we would expect weaknesses to be, too perfect in their imperfection. This ship wasn't designed by primitives struggling to catch up to our technology. It was designed by masters who understand us better than we understand ourselves." A heavy silence fell over the command deck. Vexthor felt his scales ripple with unease. "You're suggesting this is all theatrical?" "I'm suggesting," Kexri replied, "that while we've been dismissing humans as technological adolescents, they'd been studying us, learning our assumptions, our biases, and now they're using them against us." Vexthor accessed the classified reports from other Nexian encounters with human vessels. Each one showed the same pattern: ships that appeared vulnerable proving impossible to damage, weapons that shouldn't work operating with devastating efficiency, and technology that seemed primitive accomplishing things their most advanced systems couldn't match. "How?" he demanded. "How did they advance so quickly without us noticing?" "Because we were looking for advancement that mirrored our own," Kexri said. "We expected them to follow the same technological path we did. But humans—" The elder scientist's scales shifted to a deep blue of profound realization. "Humans don't think like us. They evolved on a world that should have killed them, survived challenges that would have ended most species, and developed technology in ways we never imagined possible." The ambassadors' report from their shipyards, Miratel added, pulling up the data. Admiral Chen's reference to ancient naval warfare. What if everything we're seeing is just the surface? What if their real capabilities are? She trailed off, but the implication hung in the air like a plasma charge waiting to detonate. Vexthor studied the hologram again, but now he saw it with new eyes. The crude design wasn't a sign of technological inferiority. It was a mask, hiding capabilities that might well exceed anything in the Nexian arsenal. Prepare a full strategic analysis, he ordered. I want every encounter with human vessels re-examined. And get me everything we have on their Admiral Chen. I want to understand how she thinks. As his team dispersed, Vexthor continued staring at the Odyssey's image. He'd spent his entire career studying the evolution of space warfare, the steady progression from primitive to advanced designs. But now he faced an adversary that deliberately chose to appear primitive while wielding technologies that shouldn't even be possible. For the first time in his long career, the grand strategist felt something he'd never expected. Doubt. Not just about human capabilities, but about everything the Nexian Empire thought it knew about technological superiority. In his private quarters later, he recorded a message for the Imperial Council. We have made a grave error in our assessment of humanity. They are not following our path to advancement. They are creating their own. And I fear we may have already fallen behind. The battle began with a mistake. Not a tactical error or a strategic miscalculation, but a fundamental misunderstanding that would reshape the balance of power in the galaxy. The Nexian Task Force, led by Fleet Commander Zexkar, discovered what appeared to be an isolated human colony ship near the Perseus Arm. It was another one of their bizarre designs, a massive cylinder that rotated slowly, trailing solar sails like the fins of an ancient sea creature. Scans showed minimal defensive capabilities and a hull that seemed to be made of common metals. It was, by all appearances, helpless. This is a perfect opportunity, Zexkar transmitted to his fleet. Capture that vessel. I want its technology examined in detail. Despite the warnings from Grand Strategist Vexthor about underestimating human capabilities, Zexkar saw only an easy prize. The Nexian vessels, sleek, deadly, and powered by quantum singularities, moved to surround the human ship. They were the pride of the Empire's fleet, each one a masterpiece of advanced engineering. Admiral Chen watched them approach from the bridge of the HDF Prometheus, the supposedly helpless colony ship. Interesting tactical formation, she remarked to her crew. They've learned something from our last encounter. Those aren't standard Nexian attack patterns. Lieutenant Park, now her tactical officer, nodded. They're positioning to negate the energy reflection capabilities they observed in the Odyssey. Should we show them why that won't help? Not yet. Chen studied the holographic display showing the Nexian fleet's position. Let's see how they react to our new toys first. Deploy the harvester sails. The Prometheus's massive solar sails unfurled further, their surface rippling like liquid metal in the starlight. To the Nexian sensors, they appeared to be simple light-gathering arrays, primitive but harmless. They were anything but. Human vessel, Zexkar's transmission carried the formal tones of one certain of victory. Power down your systems and prepare to be boarded. Resistance will result in your destruction. Chen's response was to activate the harvester sails. The seemingly primitive arrays suddenly blazed with energy, not reflecting the Nexian weapons as the Odyssey had done, but actively drawing power from the quantum singularity drives of the surrounding ships. Alarms blared across the Nexian fleet as their power levels began to drop. The harvester sails weren't just collecting energy. They were creating a cascading quantum feedback loop that threatened to shut down their entire propulsion system. Impossible. Zexkar watched in horror as his ships began to drift, their advanced technology rendered useless by what he had dismissed as solar collectors. All vessels, emergency power. Launch kinetic weapons. But the humans had anticipated this too. The Prometheus's hull, apparently made of common metals, suddenly shifted and flowed like liquid, forming perfect parabolic deflectors that sent the kinetic projectiles harmlessly into space. Programmable matter, Chen explained over the open channel, her voice calm. An old concept that your scientists dismissed as inefficient. We found ways to make it work by thinking differently about molecular bonds. Would you like to see what else we've developed? The Prometheus's outer hull continued to transform, revealing weapon ports that had been completely hidden by the morphing metal. But these weren't the energy weapons the Nexians had expected. Instead, thousands of tiny objects emerged, each one no larger than a human hand. We call them fireflies, Chen said. Quantum-entangled drone swarms. Another concept your scientists thought was impossible to implement effectively. The fireflies surrounded the dead in space Nexian vessels, their seemingly simple design belying the fact that each one carried enough computing power to run a small city. They moved in perfect coordination, guided by an artificial intelligence that operated on principles the Nexians had never considered. Your ships are disabled but undamaged, Chen continued. Your crews are safe. We could have destroyed your fleet, but that would have been wasteful. Instead, we'd like to talk. In his powerless flagship, Zexkar watched the fireflies dance around his vessels, demonstrating a level of control and coordination that should have been impossible. Everything he thought he knew about human technological capabilities had been wrong. You've been fighting the last war. Chen's voice carried a note of something like pity. Your weapons, your defenses, your entire approach to space combat is based on principles that we discarded decades ago. While you were perfecting quantum singularity drives, we were learning to harvest their energy. While you were building bigger ships with more powerful weapons, we were developing ways to turn your own technology against you. The fireflies assembled into a massive three-dimensional display, showing the true capabilities of the Prometheus. Layer after layer of technology that the Nexians had never imagined possible was revealed. This isn't about superiority, Chen said. It's about perspective. You see technology as a linear progression. We see it as a web of possibilities, where sometimes the best solution looks like a step backward to outside observers. In the silence that followed, Zexkar made the same realization that Grand Strategist Vex Thor had made weeks earlier. Humanity hadn't been struggling to catch up to the galactic community. They had simply been choosing not to reveal how far ahead they had already gone. What are your terms? He asked finally. First, Chen replied. I think it's time we had an honest discussion about the true state of human technology. And then, perhaps, we can talk about how our species might learn from each other. The fireflies reformed into a bridge between the Prometheus and Zexkar's vessel, a physical connection between two civilizations that had finally begun to understand each other. The Imperial archives on Nexus Prime had never been open to outsiders before. Now, Admiral Chen stood in its crystalline depths, surrounded by the accumulated knowledge of a civilization that had explored the stars while humans were still mastering fire. Next to her, Grand Strategist Vex Thor's scales shifted through patterns of deep thought as he studied a holographic display of human technological development. It was never about the ships, was it? He asked finally. The primitive designs, the apparent technological regression. It was all part of something larger. Chen nodded, watching the hologram show the deliberate progression of human vessel design, each one appearing more primitive than the last, while hiding increasingly advanced technology. We call it Project Trojan Horse, after an ancient Earth strategy. Though in our case, the horse was designed to look like it couldn't even run. The display shifted to show the true extent of human technological advancement. Hidden research stations in dimensional pockets, quantum computers disguised as mechanical calculators, ships that could rewrite the laws of physics, masked behind hulls that looked like they could barely achieve spaceflight. But why? Vex Thor's confusion was evident in the rapid color changes of his secondary eyes. Why expend so much effort to appear less advanced than you are? Chen gestured at the archives around them. Because of this, because your civilization, like most we've encountered, believes technological progress follows a predictable path. When you found us, you expected to see certain markers of advancement. Instead, we showed you what you expected to see. a younger species still finding its way among the stars. She manipulated the hologram to show the first contact between humans and the Nexian Empire. We'd already studied your civilization extensively by then. We knew your assumptions, your biases, and we knew that if we revealed our true capabilities, it would trigger an arms race at best, a preemptive strike at worst. The conservation of technological superiority. Vex Thor quoted from ancient Nexian military doctrine. Advanced civilizations must maintain their advantage to ensure stability. Exactly. So we gave you what you wanted to see. A civilization that posed no threat, that seemed to be developing along predictable lines. Meanwhile, we could study you openly, learning your strengths and weaknesses without triggering your defensive instincts. A hologram showed the Odyssey's first deployment, then the Prometheus's encounter with Zexkar's fleet. Each ship we revealed showed slightly more advanced technology, but always in ways that seemed to follow your expected pattern of development. The truth is, we could have built vessels far more sophisticated than anything in your fleet, but that would have forced a confrontation neither of us wanted. Vex Thor's scales had settled into a deep blue of revelation. The strategic implications, everything we thought we knew about human capabilities, needs to be reevaluated. Chen finished, but not because we want to dominate or threaten. We've hidden our advancement precisely because we don't want conflict. We believe there's more to gain through cooperation than competition. She brought up a new hologram, showing a design that merged Nexian and human technology. Your civilization has developed incredible technologies along your chosen path. We've developed different ones along ours. Imagine what we could achieve if we combined our knowledge instead of treating advancement like a race to be won. But the risk, Vex Thor argued, though his tone suggested he was playing devil's advocate rather than truly objecting. Sharing advanced technology is exactly what we're doing now, Chen pointed out. The question isn't whether to share technology. It's whether to do it openly and collaboratively, or continue with secrecy and suspicion. The grand strategist was quiet for a long moment, his scales cycling through thoughtful patterns. The Imperial Council will not be pleased to learn they've been deceived. They haven't been deceived, Chen corrected gently. They've been protected from their own worst instincts, from unnecessary conflict, from the kind of technological arms race that has destroyed other civilizations. We could have revealed our capabilities at any time. Instead, we chose to appear harmless while proving we could be helpful. She gestured at the archives again. Your own history shows the pattern. When civilizations of similar technological levels meet, they often end up in conflict. But when one side appears less advanced, the more advanced civilization tends to be protective, mentoring. We gave you the opportunity to be teachers rather than competitors, and in doing so, taught us more than we realized, Vex Thor concluded. His scales had settled into a pattern that Chen had learned to recognize as acceptance. The Imperial Council must be informed. But perhaps we could present this as an opportunity rather than a revelation. Chen smiled. That's exactly what we were hoping you'd say. Because we have some ideas about how our civilizations could work together. Ideas that go far beyond simple technological exchange. The hologram shifted one final time, showing a vision of joint human-Nexian projects that would reshape the galaxy. And in the crystalline depths of the Imperial Archives, two representatives of vastly different species began planning a future neither of their civilizations had imagined possible. 5 years after the revelation in the Imperial Archives, the joint human-Nexian research station, Convergence, hung in space at the edge of the Perseus Arm. Unlike anything either civilization had built before, its structure defied easy categorization. Parts of it gleamed with Nexian crystalline technology, while others bore the deliberately rough, primitive appearance of human construction. Solar sails that doubled as quantum harvesters stretched out alongside dimensional pocket generators, creating a facility that represented the best of both worlds. Admiral Chen, now serving as the station's co-director, stood in the central observation dome with her counterpart, former Grand Strategist Vex Thor. They watched as the latest prototype emerged from the construction base, a vessel that would have been impossible just a few years ago. The Council is calling it the Dawn class, Vexthor said, his scales shifting through pleased patterns. Though I hear your engineers still refer to it as the Frankenship. Chen laughed. Well, it does look like we stitched together pieces from a dozen different design philosophies. The ship before them combined the apparent crude functionality of human vessels with the elegant efficiency of Nexian engineering. Solar sails that looked like they were made of canvas but could harvest energy from quantum singularities. A hull that appeared to be riveted metal plates but could reorganize itself at the molecular level. That's what makes it beautiful, a new voice added. Elder scientist Kexri emerged from the shadows of the dome, his aged scales now bearing cybernetic enhancements developed through human-Nexian collaboration. It represents not just the combination of our technologies, but the merger of our perspectives. The elder scientist manipulated the holographic display, showing the vessel's internal systems. Humans taught us that technology doesn't have to be visibly advanced to be powerful. We taught them ways to refine and perfect their innovations. Together, we've created something entirely new. And not just in shipbuilding, Chen added. The display shifted to show other joint projects across the galaxy. Colonies where human ingenuity combined with Nexian efficiency to create sustainable habitats in previously uninhabitable zones. Medical facilities where human intuitive problem-solving complemented Nexian precise methodology. Defense systems that merged human unpredictability with Nexian technological sophistication. The militant factions in the Imperial Council are finally coming around. Vexthor noted, his scales showing satisfaction. Seeing our joint fleet in action against the swarm incursion last month convinced many of them. Your seemingly primitive approach combined with our advanced systems achieved what neither of us could have done alone. Because we stopped thinking in terms of superior and inferior technology, Chen said. We learned to see different approaches as complementary rather than competitive. The prototype vessel began its first test maneuvers, its hybrid systems working in perfect harmony. The solar sails harvested energy from nearby stars while simultaneously generating quantum fields that bent spacetime. The apparently crude hull flowed like liquid metal while maintaining the geometric precision of Nexian engineering. We've had to redesign our entire classification system for technological advancement, Kexri commented. The old linear progression model simply doesn't work anymore. Not when we've seen how different paths can lead to the same destination, or to destinations we never imagined possible. Chen nodded. That was always the problem with the traditional view of technological progress. It assumed there was only one path forward. That advancement always meant more complexity, more visible sophistication. We showed that sometimes the most advanced solution looks deceptively simple. And sometimes, Vexthor added, the most elegant solution is one that appears inelegant at first glance. His scales shifted to a pattern of amusement. I still remember my first reaction to the Odyssey. I thought humans were technological children playing at warfare. Now I understand that you had simply grown beyond our limited conception of advancement. The Dawn-class vessel completed its maneuvers, its performance exceeding all projected specifications. But more than just a successful prototype, it represented a fundamental shift in how both civilizations approached technology and progress. The real breakthrough wasn't technological at all, Chen reflected. It was philosophical. We had to learn to see past our assumptions about what advanced civilization looks like. You had to learn that progress doesn't always follow a predictable path. And together, Kexri concluded, we've opened up possibilities that neither of our civilizations imagined existed. As they watched the prototype dock with the station, Chen thought about the long journey that had led to this moment. The careful deception of Project Trojan Horse, the calculated revelation of human capabilities, the tense negotiations and gradual building of trust. All of it had been necessary to reach a point where both civilizations could truly learn from each other. Outside the observation dome, the stars seemed to shine brighter, as if acknowledging the dawn of a new era in galactic civilization. Human ingenuity and Nexian precision had combined to create something greater than either could have achieved alone. And this was just the beginning. So, Vexthor asked, his scales showing curious anticipation, "What impossible thing shall we achieve next?" Chen smiled, already thinking of new projects, new combinations of their different approaches, new ways to push the boundaries of what both species thought possible. Why don't we start by redefining impossible?